Autumn 1888. The streets of Whitechapel were a labyrinth of poverty, crime, and fear. Gas lamps flickered weakly against the darkness, casting long shadows where something far worse than thieves lurked. And then, the murders began. 5 women brutalized in ways that shocked even the most hardened detectives. Their killer? A phantom, a name that would echo throughout history, Jack the Ripper. But here's the terrifying truth. We still don't know who he was. Was he a doctor, a mad aristocrat, or just a butcher who vanished into the night? Today, we're going deep into the victims, the letters, the suspect, and my darkest theory on what really happened. But before we talk about the killer, we must remember the real people whose lives were taken from them. These women weren't just prostitutes. They were maybe mothers, daughters, sisters, women who lived in a time when poverty left them with few choices. The first victim was Marianne Nichols. She was found with her throat slit twice, and these cuts were deep enough to nearly decapitate her. Her stomach was brutally mutilated, suggesting that the killer possessed anatomical knowledge. And this overkill hinted at some sort of rage or ritualistic element. Annie Chapman was the second murder. Her throat was slashed so deeply that her spine was even nicked. Her uterus was removed and taken by the killer. And her rings were arranged neatly at her feet, which begged the question if this was his take at a sick signature. Elizabeth Stride was the third victim, and she was the only victim that was not mutilated, which hints that Jack was possibly interrupted mid-killing. Her throat was slit, but there was no organ removal, and she was found in Dutfield's yard just 45 minutes before Catherine Eddowes was killed, which leads us to the next murder, Catherine Eddowes. She was mutilated after death, her face was slashed, and her kidney was removed. The killer left her body in Mitre Square, a more public location, which raised the question, was he taunting the police? The infamous From Hell letter, which contained a preserved kidney, may actually be linked to her. Mary Jane Kelly was the final victim, and she had the most horrifying death. She was killed indoors, which gave the Ripper more time. Her entire face was flayed, her heart was missing, her organs were placed around the room, and this begs a theory. Was this Ripper's take on a masterpiece? Did he stop killing because he was satisfied with the way he killed Mary Jane Kelly? And then their stories ended, not with dignity, not with justice, but with a blade in the dark. The Ripper didn't just kill, he performed. Each murder was more brutal than the last. Organs were removed, faces slashed beyond recognition. Was this hatred or something even darker? The double event, where 2 killings took place, that begs a question. Was he taunting the police? His surgical precision. Did he have medical training or was he just a butcher? The missing uterus. Why did he take organs? Was it a trophy? Was it a ritual? And the letters, for example the From Hell letter, was that real or was just a hoax, someone pretending to be him? But there's also the question about the From Hell letter. Why was there a preserved kidney? Was it actually a letter from Jack the Ripper taunting the police and giving them the kidney of one of his murder victims? And then, after the From Hell letter, silence. No more killings, no arrests, just an unfinished nightmare. The hunt for Jack the Ripper became an obsession, spawning over 200 suspects across social classes, from poverty-stricken immigrants to members of the royal family. Yet after more than a century, not a single theory provides definitive proof. Let us examine the most compelling suspects, and why each remains frustratingly inconclusive. Aaron Kosminski was a Polish-Jewish barber living in Whitechapel, and was named in Chief Inspector Donald Swanson's private notes as the most likely suspect. According to secret police memos, Kosminski had violent tendencies and an apparent hatred of women that matched the killer's profile. He's even committed to an asylum in 1891, where it was reported that his mind shattered by his own violent impulses. That despite being the only suspect officially named by investigators, no concrete evidence ever linked him directly to the murders. No witness could place him at the scenes, no murder weapon was found among his possessions, and his asylum records suggest he may have been too mentally unstable to carry out the precise anatomical mutilations. Then there was Montague Druitt, a barista and schoolteacher whose suicide in the Thames just weeks after Mary Jane Kelly's murder seemed suspiciously timed. Some contemporary investigators believed his own family suspected him, and his background as an educated man fit the theory that the Ripper had surgical knowledge. Yet again, no physical evidence connected him to the crimes, and records show he was actively teaching in another part of London during several of the murders. His suicide may have been coincidental, or perhaps the act of a troubled man terrified he might become what he feared most. Of course, no Ripper suspect list would be complete without a sensational theory involving Prince Albert Victor, grandson of Queen Victoria. The so-called royal conspiracy suggests the prince, who allegedly contracted syphilis and had violent tendencies, was secretly committing the murders while authorities covered it up. But the prince had well-documented alibis during every murder, and the idea that dozens of officials could keep such a secret is frankly absurd. This was likely nothing more than a Victorian tabloid fodder, preying on public distrust of the aristocracy. Across the Atlantic, another suspect emerged, Francis Tumblety, an American doctor, though his medical credentials were questionable at best, who was arrested in London for indecent acts around the time of the murders. Tumblety's misogyny was well documented. He allegedly collected preserved uteruses, mirroring the Ripper's trophy taking. When the police began connecting him to the case, he fled England abruptly. While intriguing, there's no evidence he was in Whitechapel on the murder nights, and his hatred of women may have simply made him a convenient scapegoat for frustrated investigators. Which leaves us with perhaps the most terrifying possibility of all. The Jack was nobody special. Not a doctor, not a prince, just a local butcher or slaughterman who knew Whitechapel's labyrinth alleys intimately. Someone whose ordinary appearance let him blend into the fog after each horrific act. Jack the Ripper wasn't just a murderer. He was something far more dangerous. The first modern boogeyman. A living nightmare that crawled out of the shadows and into history books. While other killers faded into obscurity, Jack became a legend. But why? What is it about this one man? This phantom that still grips our imagination over a century later? Jack the Ripper didn't just kill women. He killed the illusion of safety. For the first time, the public experienced true crime as a media spectacle. Newspapers sold out within hours, each more sensational than the last. Police sketches were plastered on every corner, turning every stranger into a potential suspect. Amateur detectives flooded Whitechapel, some well-meaning, others looking to profit from the hysteria. This wasn't just a murder spree. It was the birth of an obsession, a template that would define how we consume crime stories to this day. And then there's the greatest mystery of all. How he got away with it. No DNA, no fingerprints, no surveillance cameras to catch him mid-stride. Just the unreliable glow of gas lamps and the crushing incompetence of two rival police forces who cared more about jurisdiction than justice. The Metropolitan Police and City of London Police refused to share clues, too busy guarding their pride to guard the streets. By the time they coordinated, Jack was already gone, if he was ever there at all. And so Jack evolved, from flesh and blood killer to cultural chameleon. For example, in Assassin's Creed Syndicate, you hunt him through London's rooftops. In Record of Ragnarok, he battles gods with a smirk. Black Butler dresses him in Victorian finery, while Identity V turns him into a playable monster. He's been romanticized, demonized, and everything in between, because Jack is the perfect villain. No identity to humanize him, no motive to explain him, just a top hat and a knife, forever vanishing into the fog. Maybe we'll never know the truth. Maybe some mysteries are meant to stay unsolved. But what do you think? Drop your theories below and sleep well, if you can.